And as much as I hate doing this, I'm going to have to put on my professor glasses. Now you're all blurry, but I can see my notes. So when Nancy contacted me to ask me to be the guest speaker at this month's Brockton Writers Series, of course I said, yes, please. And then I asked her what she wanted me to talk about. And she said, well, how about writing flash fiction? And the first thing that flashed through my mind was this. Boom, 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 boom. Flash! Ah, savior of the universe. Flash! Ah, you'll save every one of us. Now, as you probably know, guessing from the reaction, you know that this is the theme song from the 1980 space opera movie Flash Gordon, performed by Queen, one of the greatest rock bands in the history of music, and led by the greatest rock singer of all time, Freddie Mercury. So how could it be a bad song, right? Well, when the movie was released, reviewers generally placed the film Flash Gordon in the so bad it's good category. But in the intervening years, it's become something of a nostalgic cult classic, especially if you happen to be alive during the 80s. And it's especially enjoyable now with the right combination of beverages, edibles, or smokables, or soy. But the song though, the song is like every Queen song, but more so. It's a dramatic, epic anthem, and it pretty much tells the entire story of the film, or at least suggests the entire story in its 3-minute playtime. The song intersperses brief dialogue clips from the movie with Freddie Mercury singing and Queen playing. How could it not be awesome? Anyway, I tried to turn my attention back to what I should say about writing great flash fiction stories, but I couldn't get that song to stop playing on my mental soundtrack. Flash! Ah! Save every one of us! Seemingly, there's no reason for these extraordinary intergalactical events. What's happening, Flash? Only Dr. Hans Zarkov, formerly of NASA, has provided any explanation. Flash! Ah! He's a miracle! This morning's unprecedented solar eclipse has no cause for alarm. He's for every one of us, stands for every one of us. He saves with a mighty hand, every man, every woman, every child is a mighty flash. Okay, so 1 minute into this song, and the most important introductory details of the entire first act of the movie have already been established. The setting, the main character, the supporting characters, and the inciting incidents are already there. What could the next 2 minutes bring? General Gala, Flash Gordon approaching. What do you mean, Flash Gordon approaching? Open fire! All weapons! Dispatch Ajax and all. Bring back his body. Flash! Ah! Gordon's alive, alive, alive. Flash! Ah! He'll save every one of us. Flash! Flash, I love you, but we only have 14 hours to save the Earth. Flash! And then it hit me like a flash of lightning. This 3-minute musical version of Flash Gordon, when compared with the nearly 2-hour movie, demonstrates the incredible potential of flash fiction because it does everything that a great ultra short story should do. 1, it shows just the right details of setting, character, and plot, which combine to suggest a bigger story. 2, it evokes a strong emotional and thought-provoking response. And 3, it employs a narrative style that delivers the story in an effective way. Let's have a look at each of these in a little more detail. 1. Flash fiction shows just the right details of setting, character, and plot, which combine to tell a bigger story. Effective flash fiction can be as brief as 6 words. The most famous example you've all heard, attributed to Ernest Hemingway, probably the result of a bar bet. For sale, baby shoes, never worn. The ideal word count for a flash fiction story varies from writer to writer and from publisher to publisher. I've seen calls for flash fiction of 25 words, 50, 100, 250, 500, all the way up to 1,000. And seriously, I just entered one myself where the word count was 2,000 words. And I was like, yeah, yeah, but believe me, I was like, but whatever, I have a 2,000 word short story that we can call Flash if you want. Flash. I can't stop. Anyway, regardless of the actual word count, flash fiction tells an impactful story in the smallest possible time and space, which will vary depending on how much time and space the story needs to be told. To paraphrase Robert Southey, words are like sunbeams. The more they're condensed, the deeper they burn. For sale, baby shoes, never worn. Flash, Flash, I love you, but we only have 14 hours to save the Earth. I personally tend to think of flash fiction pieces as very short stories about very big moments. Which brings us to number 2. Flash fiction evokes a strong emotional and thought-provoking response. The common denominators of great fiction of any length, or of any work of art really, the common denominators are thought and feeling. What your creation causes others to think and feel. Unlike longer fictional forms, with flash fiction, you don't have much time and space to gradually bring your reader to the story's climax. In some respects, in flash fiction, the story is the climax. So the emotion and the thought that goes into it immediately matters. So purge those words onto the page with as much passion and fury as you can. And the best way to do this is to be there when you write. If you're writing a sad piece, tears should be welling in your eyes as you complete the story. If you're writing something funny, you should be laughing as you write. You should have a clear picture in your mind of the places and people you're writing about as you write them. If you are there when you're creating your flash fiction story, the chances are that your reader will be there too. And finally, 3. Flash fiction employs a narrative style that delivers the story in an effective way. One of the great advantages of flash fiction is that because of its brevity, you can deliver the story stylishly, using interesting and unusual narrative modes that might otherwise be difficult to sustain in a longer story. See, now that I'm reading this out loud, I would edit that line. So the style you choose for your story can be the literary equivalent of Freddie Mercury singing and Queen playing it. Flash, ah! You can write it entirely in second-person point of view instead of the more traditional first and third-person perspectives, because the you reading the story is more likely to suspend their disbelief for just a few hundred words. You can write the story entirely in dialogue. It can be completely narrative, or it can be one run-on sentence without commas. It can be anything stylistically that delivers the story in a short, powerful, memorable burst. These stylistic maneuvers can be difficult to sustain in longer stories, but when it comes to presenting your small but beautiful story in the right frame, the sky's the limit with flash fiction. You could even write a story using entirely one-syllable words, which I did once while trying to write a simple romantic story about a jazz musician meeting their soulmate after playing a club gig. I wanted the story to read in a musical way, So I tried writing it in 3/4 time, that swingy jazz. And I'll admit that was beyond my skill. It was very, very difficult to make even a short story stick in a time signature. But I noticed I was doing something else. I was using, take this off for a second so I can see you again. What I noticed I was using almost all single syllable words for this really, really short story because I was trying to make the words notes that fit the time signature. So instead, I said, well, it's going to be like a 300-word story. I'm going to write it entirely in single syllable words just to make it feel musical. And the restrictions that you can put on yourself can be liberating, especially in something that you can't sustain for a long time. I couldn't write a 200 to 300-page book using all one-syllable words. Writing 300 words that way was hard enough, but I also wouldn't have ever written any of the lines like this if I hadn't put that restriction on that a short piece allowed. You play as if there's a line from your heart to your horn. And she kicked with bare feet at the twin of the moon, which lay on top of the still lake skin. I wouldn't have written either of those lines if it hadn't been a short piece and I hadn't had the stylistic liberty that very, very short fiction provides. That story, by the way, it's just my little Canadian moment. So that story was chosen by Dave Eggers to appear in The Guardian. And it was early in my career, and it was one of those Canadian moments where I'm right, do I suck? Do I suck? Do I suck? Wait, an American picked my story from a British publication. Maybe I can do this after all, right? Anyway, all that to say that words are like sunbeams, and all the ups and downs of people they're building. And to summarize, 1, flash fiction shows just the right details of setting, character, and plot, which combine to suggest a bigger story. 2, flash fiction evokes a strong emotional and thought-provoking response. And 3, flash fiction employs a narrative style that delivers the story in an effective way. So what are you waiting for, friends? Flash! It's a miracle!
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Do we have questions from the audience? Is this on? Yeah. How big a plot does it have to be? Is it just a movement of I don't know, how much do the characters have to change? Like what is sometimes I read these flash fictions and they're just like still lifes, there's like a moment in time versus what has.
Yeah, I hear you. So to begin with, that can be good enough. If a piece of flash fiction is, say it's 100 words that paints a perfect scene and next to nothing happens in it, so what? If the reader walks away saying, wow, that was beautiful. I'm glad I saw that picture that these words painted. That's perfect. That's enough. But I think flash fiction can strive to do more than that. It's funny that you asked me to do this because you could not have known this. The writing I've been doing mostly lately has been intense little flash pieces because I have a 7-year-old and my teaching load is really heavy right now. So I have time to write, like 300 intense, like a scene. For me, though, I find that it has to be a scene that goes somewhere. Even if it doesn't show you much going on, it has to suggest something that the reader carries away and thinks about. The really best short flash fiction, I think, almost always does that. that it suggests a bigger world outside of the little picture that the Flash is showing. So Flash is liberating and intimidating at the same time, because it's liberating in that in a small space, you can do lots of cool things that you don't have to sustain for very long. But the intimidating thing is, how do I make people feel and think something amazing in a couple hundred words? But the answer is you can and you should, and do it when you have an idea that will fit in that space. If you need more words than that, take them. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. Yeah. That's wonderful. Questions?
Do you place any importance on dialogue? Is a character actually needed?
You're talking to someone who loves dialogue. Character is the key in almost everything I write. So yeah, the short answer is for me, yes. Character and dialogue can be an entire story. And you can set a lot of context and paint a bigger picture outside of a short story by what the characters say and what they do. So the answer to that is absolutely.
Well, conversely, can you have a short story or a Flash with no characters?
Absolutely, you can. In fact, I just wrote one. I considered working it in there, but it's still a little raw. It's actually about losing my mother, and it's just about the thoughts that flashed through my head as I was running downstairs at my parents' house to confront that. There's no dialogue. It's all just things. It's mostly true. It's about things that occurred to me from just objects I saw as I was running toward the bathroom where I had to deal with this thing, and no one speaks. There's no dialogue. It was just about, wow, all these thoughts are running through my head as I run toward what I know I'm about to see. So same thing. That's the great thing about a short space. It's hard to sustain a really long work with no dialogue and or no narrative. But in a short space, you can and should try anything that sells the scene and that implies the bigger story outside of it.
Any more questions? Anything online? Okay.
Oh,
One.
I
think it means that you said everything.
Everything.
It was a perfect presentation.
Any questions? No.
It's astounding. Okay, thank you very much, Richard.